Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. It increasingly seems that the government has a favourite method of retribution against those who say things it doesn't like or who act in ways it doesn't approve of. It accuses them of sedition. So today we ask, is the law of sedition being misused? Are instances of misuse growing? And if the answer is yes, what can we do about it? Those are three key critical issues that I shall raise today with one of the most illustrious former judges of the Supreme Court, Justice Deepak Gupta. Justice Gupta, let's start with something most people haven't realized. As far back as 1962, almost 60 years ago, the Supreme Court in the Kedar Nath Singh case read down section 124, which is the law of sedition. So today, it's no longer what it actually says in print. Can you begin by explaining what does this reading down amount to?
Before I come to the reading down, I think I'll give a little background of the law of sedition. Sedition after 1832 in England actually means an act which will incite violence or aggravate something against the law, public disorder of that like. But when sedition was introduced into the Indian Penal Code by an amendment, they brought in words, very wide words like disaffection against the state. As the Mahatma said, disaffection, you cannot manufacture affection. And disaffection is such a broad term that anything could fall under disaffection. So at that time it was a colonial imperialistic power which was ruling us. And they had one law in India for the Indians, but in the mother country they had another law for their own citizens. Their sedition only was if it was incited violence. And in India, right from the very beginning, there are three famous cases, but in all the cases, in the jury trials, the instruction by the judge to the jury was that if it amounts to creating disaffection or disloyalty, then it is sedition. One is the famous Bal Gangadhar Tilak trial and one is Mahatma's trial. Both were convicted of sedition. During the Constituent Assembly debates, there was a move that in these clauses in 19, which are exceptions to 19, sedition should also be there. And Dr. Munshi argued against it. And finally, the Constituent Assembly held that no, sedition should not be part of it because the general law will cover it. Then the challenge was laid to the constitutional validity of section 124A, in the sense that the Article 19 guarantees freedom of speech and expression, and this curtails it. So when it was read, if you read the judgment very carefully, it is quite obvious that an act will amount to sedition only if it has the effect of actually leading an incitement to violence of grave public disorder.
So when you say, if you read the judgment very carefully, it's clear that an act will only amount to sedition if it incites violence. This is the manner in which the Supreme Court, with the Kedar Nath Singh judgment, read down section 124A. It said sedition only applies if there is incitement to violence. Am I right?
Yes, incitement to violence or grave public disorder. You do unlawful things to do unlawful things. So incitement is, but I would say in most cases it would be incitement.
Let me quote from that Kedar Nath Singh judgment. It says, section 124A is limited to such activities as would be intended or have a tendency to create disorder or disturbance to public peace by resort to violence. And then at the end, very pointedly, the judgment says we have no hesitation to limit the application of this section to acts involving intention or tendency to create disorder or disturbance of law and order or incitement to violence. So creating public disorder or incitement to violence are critical if it's to be deemed sedition. Without incitement to violence or public disorder, it's not sedition.
It's definitely not sedition. It's the right of any citizen of this country to differ from the government, to criticize the government. No institution is above criticism.
It's only when someone incites violence and creates public disorder that it becomes sedition.
Just to give an example, there was another case thereafter in Balwant Singh, where these people had raised these slogans of Khalistan Zindabad and something like that sort. Very distasteful slogans, but the court said there is no public disorder after that.
Absolutely. In the Balwant Singh case of 1995, which you're referring to, the Supreme Court reiterated the reading down that it did in 1962. And in fact, as you pointed out in your lecture last year in September, the Supreme Court reiterated its position in the Bilal Ahmed Kallu case. It did so in the Common Cause case. And I noticed that in September 2016, just over 3 years ago, this is what the Supreme Court said. We are of the considered opinion that the authorities, while dealing with offences under Section 124A, that is the section that covers sedition, shall be guided by the principles laid down by the Constitution bench in Kedarnath Singh versus State of Bihar. So, as recently as 3 years ago, the Supreme Court has made clear that 124A is read down. It can only be used in line with the guidelines of the Supreme Court.
Absolutely. What the Supreme Court lays down is the law for the entire country. But it's sad that the magistracy seems to be oblivious of these judgments. In fact, the Bombay High Court in that Trivedi, that cartoonist case, has also laid down various conditions which should be followed. Unfortunately, that judgment will apply only to Maharashtra. But in Maharashtra, they laid guidelines that this should only be done if there is some senior official supervising it, and then the case.
Quite right. The Supreme Court has been ignored by magistrates. The Bombay guidelines laid down by the Bombay High Court have been ignored in Maharashtra. And yet the position is, there can be no doubt or confusion about the Supreme Court's position. The Supreme Court has said it multiple times. It said it very clearly. And the Supreme Court's position is well known.
No, and the Kedarnath Singh is a Constitution bench judgment. I mean, you can't fight against it. I mean, you may agree with it or do not agree with it. I totally agree with it. In fact, I would have thought that it should have been struck no.
So we have a very interesting position, Justice Gupta. Almost 60 years ago, the Supreme Court read down the law of sedition. Now it only applies if there is clear incitement to violence. The Supreme Court has on multiple occasions reconfirmed and reaffirmed its reading down. And yet, and this is the point I'm putting to you, and yet, when people tweet exaggeratedly about power breakdowns, they get charged with sedition. When journalists tweet about how protesters have died on Republic Day, they get charged with sedition. When people in Bihar write letters to the Prime Minister complaining about mob lynching, they get charged with sedition. And in none of these instances is there any incitement to violence. Isn't that proof that the sedition law is being misused?
It is definitely being misused to add to your examples, when images of the Chief Minister or the Prime Minister have been morphed, then also it is sedition. It may be in bad taste, it may be defamation, it may be fall under other offences, but it definitely would not be sedition. For me, something which is more important is that the tendency appears to be to curb the contrarian view.
Dissent.
Yes, dissent.
Or disagreement.
See, dissent is the essence of democracy. You can have no democracy where there's no dialogue, where there's no conversation, where there's no advocacy of issues.
So in other words, sedition is used by governments, and I should add, it's not just the central government, it's state governments.
State governments, and across the board, all political parties have used it, misused it, I would say.
But it's used often as retribution against those, and I'm using the word retribution deliberately, against those who disagree or who dissent, whose opinion the centre or the states don't like, who they want to silence and punish.
I think even more than retribution, what I feel is this to create a fear amongst the people that if you will speak up, then you could be sent to jail. You see, like this young lady sent to jail, her parents Disha Ravi. She may be courageous, her parents may be courageous, but there will be a lot of other parents who will be telling their children, please don't go to these.
But you're saying a very important thing, and I'm underlining it. Not only is sedition being used as retribution, it's also being used to frighten and to put fear into people. In other words, you have a electorate that has the right, citizens that have the right to speak out fearlessly, the government is making them scared to do so with the threat of sedition.
And this is an antithesis of democracy, because in my view, the citizenship should have no fear of the government in a democracy.
And yet the use of sedition or the threat of sedition is making citizens afraid.
It is.
Let me put to you 3 very recent, well-known cases of sedition where the charge was brought and ask you whether you agree with the use of sedition in those instances. The first, you mentioned it a moment ago, is Disha Ravi. Is it sedition for someone to edit a toolkit and then tweet its contents? Is it sedition for someone to be involved in a webinar with a member of what's called Poetic Justice Foundation, an organization which, by the way, isn't even banned in India?
See, as far as Disha Ravi's case is concerned, I have read the toolkit. I have read what is in the public domain. Whatever is in the public domain, I am very clear in my mind that it does not amount to sedition. And the order granting her bail by the session judge, Mr. Dharminder Rana, is a very well-written order, and it clearly spells out that it is not sedition. Being involved with this social poetic foundation, what is it?
Poetic Justice Foundation.
Poetic Justice Foundation. Now, as you said, it's not a banned organization. Maybe the promoters are promoting something which is something I would not support, which I don't support. But she may have been ill-advised or may not be the most, most sensible thing to do if she knew that they were espousing the cause of Khalistan, because that's the case made out. But I'll go to the extent that even if she knew about it, but she is only getting in touch with them for the farmers' protest, and they are not talking of anything else, then also it is not sedition. Talking to somebody who may have some other point of view which I violently disagree with, but I agree with that person on some other point of view, I don't think that can amount to sedition.
Let me ask you bluntly, Justice Gupta, is it sedition? In fact, let me broaden it. Is it a crime to talk to someone who espouses and champions Khalistan?
No, it's not. In fact, you see, sometimes the government will send people to have a dialogue with these people also. You have to, in fact, it's only by dialogue that you can convince them that what you are espousing, the cause you are espousing is a wrong cause. And let's come to the table and...
Is it a crime to talk to someone who is a member of a banned organization?
I'm not so sure about that. I don't think it's a crime. Being a member of a board, of a banned organization is a crime under that.
But talking to a person?
Talking to that person is not a crime.
And it's certainly not sedition.
No, unless that you are talking in lines of furthering the cause, the illegal cause of the organization, then maybe.
Let me put it like this. Successive governments, including the present government, are talking to the Naga Socialist Organization. Those are people who waged war in India. Their leader has given me an interview in October where he continued to say that he demands sovereignty and separateness for Nagaland. He's housed in a government house in Lodi Estate. By the government's claim that it's sedition for Disha Ravi to be talking to the Poetic Justice Foundation, it's clearly sedition for the Prime Minister and the government to be talking to this gentleman.
No, I don't think they're saying that. They are saying, they're trying to add that she was also espousing their cause. But on the what material is on record, there's nothing to say.
Absolutely not. And as you said, talking to someone who's a member of a banned organization is not a crime, it's not sedition.
No, not at all. It's not a crime.
Otherwise, that charge could be used against the government when they negotiate.
It could be used against you, Mr. Thapar.
Absolutely. Anyone. I spoke to the gentleman. Yes.
And he might have said some things which are against the government in that interview.
In fact, Disha's namesake, Mr. Ravi, the governor of Nagaland, is frequently talking to the NSCN.
No, and I think, if you've gone through Justice Rohinton Nariman's judgment in the Shreya Singhal case, he says the essence of free speech is 3. It is 1, a dialogue, then an advocacy, and 3rd is incitement. First 2 can never be an offence.
Only incitement is.
Only incitement can be an offence.
Let me come to a second well-known case of sedition and put it to you. Is it sedition for journalists to tweet that they have been told that someone who died at a Republic Day protest was shot? And this is something, by the way, the dead man's grandfather firmly believes to be the truth?
I'll take the assumption that this gentleman, this farmer, died by an accident and the police is right. Let's assume they are right. Then also, if a wrong tweet has been made, something, and it's not that a wrong tweet has been made with a malicious intent. That news was coming out. Some people were saying that he had been hit or shot and then the tractor overturned. How in the world can that be any offense whatsoever? Leave aside sedition. In my view, it's no offense.
It's no offense at all.
Yeah, it may be bad reporting in the sense that you've not counter-checked your facts. But more than that, it is nothing else. It was not done with the intention of creating violence or anything.
So journalists tweeting about how a protester got killed, even if they've got it wrong, is not only not sedition, it's no offense at all.
As far as, unless you see the police, sedition, even then no. But if it is done with a malicious intent of more, there were old cases which were numbers, just after independence there were some cases when that is when this section was being tested, where when particular community died, then the figures were inflated, etc. Then that were held to be.
But that's clearly not the case here.
That's not the case here.
So that example may illustrate and illuminate history, but it doesn't make this, what happened on Republic Day when journalists tweeted, either sedition or even a crime.
In my view, it's no crime. At the best, it's bad reporting if you don't verify your facts.
Let me come to a third example. And this time I'll happily admit, it's a contentious one. As you yourself cited a moment ago, in 1995, the Supreme Court ruled in the Balwant Singh case that it was not sedition to shout Khalistan Zindabad. And incidentally, as you know, Justice Gupta, that was said on the very day Indira Gandhi was assassinated.
And it was said in the main square in Chandigarh.
Absolutely. In public, with people there. Now, if JNU students shout, Bharat tere tukre honge, inshallah, inshallah, is that sedition?
I'm not sure whether this was shouted because there's a lot of controversy.
Kanhaiya Kumar actually claims he never said it.
That's why I'm saying I'm not going to. Now, this.
But he's accused of saying it, in which case I ask the question, assuming he said it, whether he whispered it, spoke it, or shouted it,
if that
is it sedition?
If that is part of a system where it's a call, to lead to violence, like if this slogan has to be coupled with an act of incitement, then it may be. This is a case which could be covered if the police can prove that it was done with the intention of inciting. That because you can.
As yet, the police haven't proven it; they've simply asserted or claimed it.
That's why to prove that, if they can link this slogan, you see this slogan and couple it with a fact and link it to something that it was done with the intention of leading up to some violence or a public disorder, then it could be a case of sedition.
But in the absence of police proof, and we're talking about proof, not just a simple assertion, linking this slogan to an intention to create disorder, if you don't have that proof, it's not sedition.
It will not be sedition.
And therefore, to claim it's sedition, the police have to be able to prove a link between the call and some act of violence.
Act of violence, or at least an intention to create violence, because that would also be, the sedition does not only happen if the violence actually takes place, it could also be.
We're talking about something that happened in, I think, 2016, 3.5 years, if not more, have passed. That proof is not available to anyone.
It doesn't appear to be so, because there's just.
This is very important. It doesn't appear to be sedition.
It doesn't appear to be. Because till now one has not seen anything coming on the public domain, and by now the charge sheet should have been, 3.5 years ago, these trials should finish.
Let me quote to you from that sub-judge who you referred to a moment ago, the gentleman who gave Disha Ravi last month bail.
This is
the session judge. This is what he said at the time. He said, the law of sedition is being used to minister to the wounded vanity of governments. Would you agree with that?
Yes, but I must clarify that this phrase was first used by Chief Justice Maurice Squire, because in the federal court, that was the first time that pre-independence that a view was taken that what is the post-32 law in England should also be the law in India.
He was the first person to actually read down sedition, but he was overruled by the Privy Council in England, so we went back to the tougher version of sedition, although he'd ruled it down.
That is, and he was one of the good Chief Justice, also happened to be Vice Chancellor of Delhi University after.
In fact, the interesting thing is that what the Supreme Court did in 62 when it read down sedition was in a sense to do what Sir Maurice Guire had done almost 20, 30 years
Yes,
earlier.
45 or 46 if I'm not mistaken.
That's what I'm saying, 20, 30 years earlier. So you do agree that sedition is used by governments to minister to their wounded vanity.
Definitely, definitely. You see, and it's what the English brought this law when we were part of a colonial system. For 30 years, no case was filed. The first case under this provision was filed about 20 or 30 years after the act. It was used only against our freedom fighters. It was misused, I would say. But now I see a tendency of every year 50, 100, 200 cases, 300 cases. That
You're collapsing into the second dimension of this interview. Let's come to it. In the first, we've clearly established that the law of sedition is being misused.
yes.
The second is the belief that, in fact, instances of misuse are increasing. The website Article 14 has calculated that 65% of the cases of sedition filed against nearly 11,000 people since 2010 were registered after 2014. And the government's own National Crimes Records Bureau has said that its figures show a 165% increase in the cases of sedition between 2016 and 2019. So now, in addition to the fact that sedition is being misused, we also know that the instance of misuse is almost increasing exponentially.
Yeah, definitely is increasing exponentially, and not only increasing exponentially, what the idea is that people should be scared of speaking against the government. What I really wonder is what will happen if you keep increasing these cases, because tendency, it's the youngsters who will say something may not be, I may not agree with it, but he or she has a right to say what they want to say. If they're not inciting violence, if they're not inciting public disorder, they can criticize not only the government, they can criticize the judiciary, they can criticize the army, they can criticize anybody. Nobody is above criticism. Because if we stop this, then we are heading towards becoming a police state and not a democracy.
And we're heading in that direction.
This is the line where I see grown-up people a bit scared of expressing their views. As it is, we're becoming a rather intolerant society. The art of conversation is dying down.
When in a democracy adults are scared to express their views, that is a blot on the democracy.
I agree. If anybody who is a citizen of this country should not be scared of the government. There should be no fear of the government. There should be respect and love for the government, not fear of the government.
Respect the government. The government should actually encourage respect, not instill fear.
In fact, I would go to the extent of saying that the government should encourage dialogue, encourage discussion, because that is how we improve. If you have no dialogue, you have no discussion, then you have no improvement.
But we've reached a situation, Justice Gupta, where we have a very deeply worrying set of circumstances facing us. A, the law of sedition is being misused. B, instances of misuse are increasing exponentially. And I want to put this to you. Why isn't the Supreme Court intervening? I know learned judges like yourself, after your retirement, in your case it was September last year, have delivered eloquent lectures on the law of
No, that was before
sedition.
my retirement.
But why do other sitting judges not speak out? Why are people on the bench today silent?
No, I won't say they're silent. They'll speak out when a case comes to them. You see, you can't expect these matters to be taken up in a PIL by the Supreme Court. But I do.
Why? Why?
No, I wouldn't, because criminal matters, you don't take it up as a PIL.
Can I tell you one reason why perhaps it should be? When the Supreme Court's Kedarnath Singh judgment is being disregarded, that's not just disrespect to the Supreme Court, That's defiance of the Supreme Court, and that amounts to contempt.
No, but it will have to come up to the Supreme Court. I don't think it can be taken up. I'm very clear that it cannot be taken up as a public interest litigation.
No, but why can't it? The Supreme Court had no problem taking suo motu cognizance of the Prashant Bhushan contempt, even though the Attorney General had advised against it. Here, the contempt is being done by governments, state and central, and by police forces, and that's much worse than an errant lawyer.
No, but somebody will have to bring it to the Supreme Court. Any one of these people can bring the
But
matter.
if the Supreme Court's law for 60 years is being defied and abused,
This is not the only law which is being defied. There are many laws which are
but this
being
impinges upon our democracy, it
I
impinges upon the
agree.
rights of our citizens, and the
I-
Supreme Court does nothing.
I agree with that. No, the Supreme Court, I'm sure, will do something. But,
But
when the matter comes up to it, somebody will have to take up in a bail matter or in something. It will have to.
But
go
isn't
up.
this very strange?
And I hope that the Supreme Court does pass some guidelines, like in the case of Shreya Singhal in the Information Technology Act, that Section 69, which was held to be unconstitutional. They'll give some further guidelines that there should be some stringent way of checking. There should be a strict way of checking how cases are filed. Sedition cases are being filed at a drop of a hat. Anybody files a complaint anywhere in the country and a sedition case is filed.
Justice Gupta, I'm intrigued by what you're saying. You're saying that the Supreme Court, you hope, not that it will, but you hope it will, issue guidelines about how sedition cases are filed, because at the moment they're being filed almost thoughtlessly. Let me put to you a viewpoint that will occur to the audience hearing our conversation. The Supreme Court exists to uphold the Constitution of India. The government of the day, whether the central government or the state governments, are sworn to fulfill the Constitution. Here we have multiple instances of governments and their police forces breaching the law of the land, and the Supreme Court is silent. It does nothing.
Yes, because some matter will have to go to the Supreme Court.
But why? If you can take suo motu cognizance of Prashant Bhushan's contempt, even when the Attorney General advised against it, why not here?
See, in a contempt matter, it is the duty of the Act itself says that the court can take suo motu.
But this is contempt. This
No.
is defiance of the Supreme Court's Kedarnath Singh judgment.
Because contempt will have to be made out from the facts of each case. I have given a view which, my view is that this is not in accordance with the with the judgment in Kedarnath Singh's case. But I don't agree with this that it has to be a suo motu.
Can I put this to you? The Supreme Court is aware that for 60 years almost, the law of sedition is being misused. It can't not be aware.
The last judgment is in 2016.
It knows it. It knows that it's being misused. Secondly, the Supreme Court is aware that instances of misuse are exponentially increasing.
I'm not sure whether the Supreme Court is aware.
Judges don't live in ivory towers, even if they pretend. They are aware of what Article 14 has published. They know about the National Crimes Record Bureau. It's in all the papers. I'm not quoting facts that are not known.
But this, you see, they will have to. It is not that you take up everything on a suo motu. I would say somebody can file a petition, and then the call can be taken by the Supreme Court.
Listen to your words, Justice Gupta. It's not that everything should be taken up suo motu. That means that some things can be taken up suo motu, but the Supreme Court has chosen not to take this up.
That is for the court. The Chief Justice has decided, because normally the suo motu powers are exercised only by the Chief Justice.
But can I point this out to you? If for 60 years the court is aware that the law is being misused, if it's now aware that cases of misuse are exponentially growing, and it still chooses not to take up the matter suo motu, do you know what people will conclude? The Supreme Court is happy for the misuse to happen. In fact, forgive me, I don't mean to be offensive. People will say not only is the Supreme Court happy for the misuse to continue, by not acting, it suggests complicity.
I am not at all agreeable with both of these things.
I'm sure you're not.
It's just that, you see, we see a lot of, even when one is a judge in the Supreme Court, one sees a lot of things which are not, one feels, that this is not happening right. But you can't take up every matter suo motu.
But this is not every matter, Justice Saab. This is one of the most important issues facing our democracy.
It is an important issue. I'm not saying that. And I'm quite sure that why can't somebody then take it up to the Supreme Court in a properly...
Why can't the Chief Justice, who has the powers to raise matters suo motu, take it up himself?
Well, that you can ask him, not me.
Or
not being Chief Justice. You see,
in fact, Justice Saab, not just ask the Chief Justice of the day. one could ask all the Chief Justices going back 20 years almost, if not more.
I don't think, you see, because you don't take up suo moto matters like this, because each case will have to be decided on, you see, even each case has to be decided on the facts of each case. What I do hope is that someday guidelines are framed, like what the Bombay High Court did in that Amit Trivedi case. Those sort of guidelines are framed by the Supreme Court, because, you see, even up to 74, this offence was not a cognizable offence.
And now it is.
And in 74, in Mrs. Gandhi's time, it was made a cognizable offence.
And so it's even worse.
So it has become even tougher. Even during British Raj, you could not, this case, the police could not...
And just explain to the audience, why is it worse that it's become a cognizable offence?
Cognizable offence means that the offence can be taken note of by the police without taking permission of the magistrate.
Absolutely, which means any police officer with a bee in his bonnet can actually go and arrest you for sedition, even though his understanding of the law is not just wrong, it's completely baloney.
So, and therefore, if it is again brought back, that's what I said in my lecture, which I gave 2 years back, that even, first, I am against having sedition on the statute book. This is a personal view.
I was coming to that. Your personal view is sedition should be abolished.
Yes.
Abolished.
Yes.
Scrapped completely.
Yes. That's my personal view, because this law is being misused. So you can have crimes, waging war against the country, you can have that. But sedition, the way it is framed, and the other suggestion which I had given is that if, people don't agree with my point of view that sedition should not be scrapped, it should be scrapped from the law book, then at least bring back that pre-independence era that the police cannot investigate or register a matter without the permission of the...
Remove the cognizable bit.
Yes. If you bring in that, a lot of the problem would be solved. You wouldn't have a case being filed in Kerala, another one in Kashmir, another one in the north.
So you're saying 3 important things which I'm repeating for clarity for the audience. Your first preference, your personal view is the law should be scrapped.
Yes.
Section 124A, the law on sedition, should be abolished and scrapped. If that can't be done, then at least make it a non-cognizable offence so that a policeman cannot go and arrest anyone without a warrant.
And which was this position existing before?
And the third thing is you hope the Supreme Court will lay down guidelines that determine how the law is used so that it's not used thoughtlessly.
No, just to add to that, in the third part, the guidelines I would hope is like in the lines that a senior officer in the police will take, look at the facts and then sanction somebody to file. And the filing should only
So it should require the sanction of a senior officer.
And it should be filed only by a police, only by the state. It's a crime against the state. It should be filed only by the state and not any Tom, Dick and Harry walking on the roadside doesn't like what Mr. Karan Thapar has said and then file the sedition case against him.
My last question. I'm going back to something I said earlier, because you said that the power to raise the matter suo moto vests with the Chief Justice. We know that many Chief Justices for 20 years have chosen not to exercise that power as far as sedition is concerned. Had you been Chief Justice, would you have exercised the suo moto power?
No.
You would not have?
No. I strongly believe that suo moto powers should be exercised very, very rarely. But I would have expected that if a challenge to Section 124 would have come up before me, I would have immediately, if I was the Chief Justice, I would have formed a Constitution bench to hear the matter.
But you would have waited for a challenge to come.
Yes. Because I am...
One last question.
I am very chary of using these suo moto powers.
Is it the case, sir, that for the last 40 years, no credible challenge of 124A has come before the court?
I think there was a challenge recently, if I am not mistaken. I am not very sure.
But it's not been heard as yet.
It has not been heard, or they've been asked to go to the High Court. I am not very sure. Something like that.
So even when a challenge did come,
I'm not sure.
The Supreme Court has delayed hearing it, and worse still, may have sent it to the High Court instead.
I'm not very sure, but I have a feeling I read.
But that undermines the argument you were giving me a moment ago. Let's wait for a challenge.
No,
don't do it suo moto. But now when a challenge does come, the court is not even happy to respond to the challenge. It's either delayed it or sent it to a High Court. So even by your own light, Your own institution is
that
not
is my
responding.
view. As I told you, that even if I was not the Chief Justice, I was much lower down in the hierarchy. But even if I was the Chief Justice, I would not take
Are
it
you
up.
disappointed that when this challenge came, it wasn't heard immediately?
I'm not
that
sure.
it was sent to a high court?
I'm not sure because I'm.
But if you're right, would you
if
be
I'm
disappointed?
Right, and I'll tell you one thing, Mr. Thapar, that half the petitions, because when you lay a challenge to a constitutional provision, the petition should be very well drafted. A half-baked petition causes more damage to the.
But we don't know whether this is half-baked or
We
badly
don't-
drafted.
we don't know
So let's
either.
leave that
We
aside.
don't- we don't know.
But given that a challenge was presented, are you disappointed that it wasn't heard
Yes,
immediately?
if
You
what
are.
If what I read that there was a challenge to 124, because then I would, if I was there, I would have said let's decide it in the Supreme.
And you're disappointed it wasn't heard immediately.
I won't say disappointed, but this is my view. Another judge can have another.
It should have been heard immediately.
No, you see, no. Please see, there are 2 points of view in law also. When we, like everything, yes, Article 32 gives the right to any party to challenge a matter in the Supreme Court. There are some judges who feel Article 32 should be very sparingly used, and they send the cases back
But
to the
you're
High Court.
speaking for yourself.
I would have entertained it.
Immediately.
Yes.
That is a very clear answer. Justice Gupta, thank you very much for this interview. Take care. Stay safe.